The observer effect. It's a pop science thing that drives me nuts. Not the actual observer effect, but what people think the observer effect is. And I run into this all the time from people of all kinds of education levels. I've even met physics students that started studying physics because they heard this interpretation of things and have just refused to let it go as they learned it's nonsense. Okay? The bottom line is that it's something that we want to believe because it puts us at the center of our own universes. Not only do we get to keep religion, but we get to be gods too. And we get to say that science proves it's true. It's compelling. What all these people believe, educated or not, is the following pop science reading of the observer effect. Now, let's sit down, let's ready ourselves for this, because like I say, I run into this all the time. People of all kinds of education levels, it's rampant, okay? And this is what they think. Suppose you look up into the sky at night. By observing the sky, you create the shooting stars. Fuck conservation laws. It's magic. I've learned that one rarely gets anywhere explaining this properly. But for the record, let's do this. How does the observer effect relate to shooting stars? Well, let's realize that the observer effect is not restricted to quantum effects. Okay? The observer effect is universal between masses like gravity is, which is to say that gravity can be thought of as an observer effect in some way. Things do not have to be alive to observe each other, and that itself should give you a clue that nothing is actually happening at the level of projective thought. There is an observer effect between a rock and a tree, because there's a gravitational force. But you might guess correctly that it would be smaller than any kind of a statistical error you could conceive of. This is the actual observer effect you may have on a shooting star. There is a disturbance, but it's entirely insignificant. That star shoots by whether you see it or not. The tree falls, whether you are in the forest or far away. And while you do have an effect on the shooting star, that effect is really purely abstract. You couldn't even really begin to try and quantify it. And you know what? While you've been sitting around wondering if you created that shooting star or not, you failed to realize that that shooting star has probably been floating around the galaxy for billions of fucking years. Billions of years. And it doesn't matter whether you see it enter the Earth's atmosphere or not. Sorry, you're not that important. It will or it will not, dependent entirely on the various gravitational forces at work. But there's an ironic twist here. Depending on the size and age of the object, there may very well be an important observer effect on the shooting star. But from other gravitational objects, like Jupiter, Saturn, the Sun, maybe even some of that exotic pull we've got coming from outside the galaxy. And the sum total of all those planetary observer effects would comprise something called the N-body problem, which would actually help us understand the way that the shooting star is moving, and whether it will or will not enter the atmosphere and become something that you can see. So it would follow that if we were the size of planets, then we could measure our effects on the stars, or other random debris floating around in the universe. The galaxy, to be more specific. Solar system even. To scale, that's why we can have a noticeable effect at the quantum level, because we're big. So no, physics does not say that you imagine your own reality. I know it's a nice idea and everything, but it's just not what physics actually says. It never did. And I think we can be pretty sure that it never will say that. That was actually just something that a bunch of fucking potheads in the 60s came up with. Not physics. Maybe they watched Star Trek together or something. Maybe that's why this came up, you know. Back in 1966, Isaac Asimov and Timothy Leary got together and watched an episode of Star Trek. And they thought about it, and Timothy was like, man, is it really real? Is it there? What if it's just like all in our minds? And, no doubt amused, Isaac said something about an observer effect. And Larry just ran with it. Maybe that's it. Maybe I'm just making shit up. Maybe you'll repeat what I said, and whether it's true or not, it will become the official explanation. I don't know. I don't. But I know that whenever I hear this, and I hear it all the time, it drives me fucking bonkers. It is the literal negation of science.